Thank you. Is there a motion to on 2088 to accept it? Mr. Butler,
I move the committee recommend HB 2088 favorably for passage.
is there a second? Yes, I am. Oh, is there any discussion on this bill? Representative, you may close.
I would close the hearing.
All in favor, say aye. All opposed? The motion has passed. I like things like this. It's easy. Wish more things would go like this. At this time, we're glad to have a hearing by Major General David Weiser from the National Guard. Thank you, sir, for being here.
Mic check. I think this is on. Yes. Good morning, everybody. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I understand a lot of you had military service in your careers. Yours personally and family members, I would like to say thank you for your service. Thanks for supporting your family members as well. As Mr. Chairman said, I'm Major General Weiser. I'm the Adjutant General, and I want to take this opportunity to stand in front of you to give you, or basically discuss what's happening in the Adjutant General's Department this week, this month, and this year. The department is responsible for the operations of the Kansas Army and Air National Guard, the Kansas Division of Emergency Management, Kansas Homeland Security, and administrative support for the Civil Air Patrol. I'm appointed by the governor and serve three roles: the commander of the Kansas National Guard, the director of KDEM, and the Homeland Security Advisor. As you can see, the diverse nature of the agency makes it unique, and it receives authorities and funding from both state and federal governments. So our mission is pretty broad and diverse. The mission is to protect life and property through planning, coordination, and synchronization of state and federal resources, to provide a ready military, emergency management, and homeland security capability for our state and nation. All of that is dependent upon your support here at the state, as well as support at the federal level. We'll start with a quick overview of the Kansas National Guard. We're authorized approximately 7,200 guardsmen. Currently, there are approximately 6,690 soldiers and airmen in the Kansas National Guard. Of those, about 21% are full-time, and the rest are part-time members, meaning they're college students or they're employed full-time across communities in our state. The Kansas National Guard participates in a spectrum of operations, from domestic operations in the state to federal missions overseas. This, again, is an area where our uniqueness comes in. There are three broad categories or statuses that we can be activated. The first is state active duty. Under this activation, we fall under the authority and control of the governor and are funded by state funds. When you hear us discuss domestic operations, this is most likely the status our guardsmen are in. The second is a Title 32, U.S. Code Title 32 status. Under this activation, we're still under the authority and control of the governor. However, we are federally funded. This is the status our guardsmen are in during our 1 weekend a month duties and our annual training events. The third and final status is Title 10. Under this activation, we fall under the authority and control of the president and are federally funded. This would normally be for our overseas operations. So going back to the first status of state active duty, we would be government controlled and state funded. Again, typically these are domestic operations. Our mission is to provide trained and disciplined forces to domestic emergencies or otherwise provided by state law. Kansas National Guardsmen serve to protect the lives and property of Kansans in response to disasters and emergencies throughout the state, including tornadoes, floods, snowstorms, and other weather-related and man-made disasters or emergencies. An example of our guardsmen being in state active duty status would be the Reno County fires last March. We were tasked to assist with our UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters. They were able to drop over 1,200 gallons of water to assist in the wildland fire emergency response. Along with disaster response within the state, we assist other states as needed. An example of that is in 2021, we deployed over 250 troops to Louisiana in order to assist with hurricane recovery efforts. Going to the other end of the spectrum, we deploy guardsmen in Title 10 status, which is federally controlled and funded by the government or by the president. We provide Kansas guardsmen for Title 10 missions literally all the time. In 2022, the Kansas Army National Guard deployed or redeployed 3 units consisting of approximately 650 soldiers. These soldiers were deployed to multiple locations around the world. They were tasked with multiple lines of effort, from detention facility security in Cuba to command and control and stability and support operations in the Middle East. The Kansas Air National Guard is engaged in Title X missions every day from right here in Kansas, as well as various deployed locations around the globe. In 2022, we had over 320 airmen conducting active duty Title X missions. Our Kansas Air National Guard conducts a broad range of missions to include cyber operations, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, command and control, and aerial refueling. During 2022, the Air National Guard hosted and participated in a large exercise in Salina. The exercise consisted of over 1,500 military personnel from around the nation. The event provided an opportunity to train joint components in ground-to-air integration. As you can see, your National Guard is actively involved in vital missions all over the world. Next, we'll move a little bit to emergency management. I briefly discussed the military role in emergency management, but that is the response efforts. All emergency events start and end at the local level. The Kansas Department of Emergency Management is the lead state agency for coordinating the state's emergency disaster response and recovery activities. When an event occurs, the local responders will be the first on the scene. If the response exceeds their capabilities, they can request help from the state. KDEM will then coordinate with the local emergency management and other agencies, to include the National Guard, to provide the response capabilities needed for the event. Outside times of crisis, KDEM interfaces with county emergency management agencies to provide technical assistance through mitigation and preparedness programs. They develop and maintain the Kansas Response Plan, coordinate a statewide training and exercise program in support of the National Preparedness Goal, as well as prepare requests for federal disaster assistance and manage disaster assistance recovery programs. Finally, Homeland Security. The bulk of our Homeland Security work is accomplished at the Kansas Intelligence Fusion Center. They're focused on Homeland Security intelligence analysis through early warning and risk assessments. They integrate and coordinate between federal intelligence partners, critical infrastructure companies, and local analysts to provide timely and actionable threat information to ensure the protection of our state. As you can surmise, there are real threats and challenges on the horizon for Kansas. The threats are increasing, they're constantly evolving, and they cannot be underestimated. They demand constant attention, innovation, and proactive mitigation measures to protect our state and ensure we're able to accomplish our missions. Currently, our top challenges in the agency are recruiting and attention, funding issues to include maximizing our federal match dollars with a decrease in federal disaster funds, sustainability of the force, wildland fire management, and the velocity of change and the complexity of change. This is an incredibly daunting task, but I know the professionals of the Adjutant General's Department remain vigilant, focused on the threats, and ready to protect our home state and nation. Your support of our agency is not only critical to military readiness, but also Homeland Security and emergency management activities that support and protect our state and nation. And again, I thank you for that support. I now stand for your questions.
Any questions? Representative Dodson.
Thank you very much for doing this. Very informative and something everybody needs to know about what their National Guard does for them every day. When we were discussing the other day, after we left the meeting, it came to mind that the funding for particularly the emergency management and the Homeland Security, I could not recall, and I didn't really look it up. Is all of that covered this year, next year in the governor's budget, or do we need to do something?
The governor's budget provides us exactly what we asked for Homeland Security and emergency management. So again, a lot of our budgeting is, as we discussed the other day, most of our budgeting is federal match. So our state budget is relatively small, but it brings in large dollars for the federal government. To the max extent, it's a 90-10. So every $1 for the state, we can maximize a lot of our monies at 90%, so 1 to 9. And other monies are 25%. So it's across the board. But in our budget, I hate to give you figures right now. Round numbers, $500 million is the budget you all see, and about $10 million of that comes from the state.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sir, is there a concern? It looks like we're
Absolutely, it's a concern. So it's not just Kansas. It's a nationwide issue of recruiting. I think our retention program is working well. I owe a lot of that retention program to what you all have provided us. One being the state educational benefit program that we have. It's a very expensive program. We went through a little over $4.1 million last year providing educational benefits to our guardsmen. We worked through the Board of Regents. We've asked for an increase through the Board of Regents for this year. I think that's going to go through. So round numbers, $5 million. So I think that helps our retention program. But now it's how do we get people in the door? We've got 65 Army recruiters, Army National Guard recruiters out there working across the state. We get about 12 Air National Guard recruiters out there working across the state. So yeah, we're out there every day selling our story, telling our story, and trying to encourage young men and women to come join our force. Be proud members of the Kansas National Guard. So yes, it is an issue. Long answer to your short question.
Any other questions? Senator Goddard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, General. My question kind of follows along with the Representative Younger. Given the fact that you are about 600 short, what kind of percentage of eligible young people, say 18 to 30, 18 to 27, qualify for military service?
Not many. So depends on what study, what report you read. Best case scenario, about 25% of our 18 to 24-year-olds actually qualify to serve in the military. So then as you neck that down further, there's about 1% that have the propensity to serve. So the desire to serve. So yeah, it's a pretty small target for us. Again, it's not just Kansas, this is nationwide. So there's a lot of things that we talk about. I get to go to several meetings at the national level. We talk about different things at the national level to include the testing criteria to get into the military. That's one I'll pick on right now. We take a test. It's the Armed Service Vocational Aptitude Battery Test. It was designed very similar. I know some of you have probably taken that test. If you've not taken that test, it's very similar to the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. So one of the frustrations right now is that test of test doesn't test the skills, the educational skills as to how we train students today. So several years ago, about 40 plus years ago, when I took the test, every kid didn't show up to school with a calculator. We learned long math. Well, today, every kid shows up with a phone that's got a calculator on it. You cannot use a calculator for the ASVAB. The math scores on the ASVAB tests are not great. We don't teach kids to do math without a calculator. So that's what we're discussing when I go to the national level meetings. Is we're not asking to dumb down the test. We're asking to change the test so we can test what we teach people now. So that's just a very small example of things we're trying to pursue. Try to get people more interested and more eligible. Medical issues are another issue for us. Back when we had paper records at our doctor's offices, well, sometimes those got lost. Sometimes things didn't get reported. Now with electronic records, you go clear back to birth. And so every medical issue is now electronically recorded. And there's no, hey, I forgot to tell the recruiter that I broke my toe when I was 7 years old. Well, now there's no forgetting that you broke a toe. It's in your records. So again, that's another challenge for us as well.
Over the last, if I may, Mr. Chair, over the last 10 years, I've really been shocked at the small number of young people in that category that qualify for military service. And I think we're going to face another problem in a few years as the COVID-19 group moves through the education system, because with school shutdowns and all this stuff, no socialization, I think that we've got a group of people over a period of 2 or 3 years that are going to be even less qualified for military service. I appreciate you being here. Thank you for your comments, and we support you 100%.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate your comments.
Senator Collins?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. General, back when I was in the Guard, I remember we didn't really have any kind of medical benefits like for family dependents. And I hear now that they do, which I think is great. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly. So we've got, it's called TRICARE right now. So as a 1 weekend a month soldier or airman, you're eligible for TRICARE insurance. So that's lack of better terminology, it's a federal group insurance plan. So all of our soldiers and airmen, they have to pay for it. That's another thing that we're working at the national level is we're asking for free TRICARE benefits for every single one of our soldiers and airmen. But right now they have to pay for it. And I have to ask the team back here, do you guys remember what the cost is? Round numbers, $250 a month for a family for TRICARE insurance. So, but every one of our soldiers and airmen are eligible for that. We have, so $250 doesn't sound like a lot when you're a little bit more mature and have a paying job. Some of our soldiers and airmen going to school full time, their only job is coming in 1 weekend a month. So if they're paying for healthcare insurance, that pretty much chews up their entire weekend's worth of pay. So it sounds inexpensive. It's a great benefit. But again, at the national level, that's where we're trying to push through that, hey, we need TRICARE insurance free of charge for all of our soldiers and airmen.
Yeah, that'd be great. Like I said, it's great that that you can offer it at all because, like I said, when I was in, it was, you didn't have a plan with your employer or something, you were out of luck.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks for your concern.
Representative Hudson?
Just to follow up on your comment, you may know that the Army has reached a point that we have to have free basic training. So take young people in, get them back in shape, and then get them to a level that they can be successful when they go through basic training, which already, as you know, we had to lengthen once just to make sure they could make it through. So that number that you're aiming at, I think if it weren't for people transferring out of active duty into the National Guard or Army National Guard, it'd be even worse.
You're absolutely correct. And we actually have a Army Guardsman in that free basic training course right now. So we hope for success, but it's another expense that, again, times are just different.
I wanted to ask you about employer support to the Guard. Is that still going okay?
Absolutely. So if you're not, I would assume everybody is somewhat familiar with ESGR is what we call it. So you can't fire a guardsman if they get deployed and they come back to work. About 5 years ago, I had to make several trips to businesses to talk about, here's what your guardsman is doing when they deploy with us. I think employers are getting much more educated. My concern is still with small mom and pop organizations, and other states are getting after that as well. They're giving some tax incentives to small businesses. And, I don't know what the number is, if it's 20 employees or less, if you hire a guardsman, because it hurts a small business. It also hurts small municipalities. We've got police officers that will activate unknowingly, 3 or 4 or 5 people out of the same department. Well, if you're a small town, that's really painful. So yeah, we're very cognizant of ESGR rules. I think most employers are as well, but we don't try to take advantage of those rules. COVID was a perfect example of, I would take phone calls. Can you not activate this nurse or this police officer because here's the size of my organization? Well, again, I would look at mission requirements and try to find somebody else. 100% successful on this one because we were just able to do it. We had 800 guardsmen we deployed across the state through COVID. So it gave me some flexibility to not impact local business owners and small businesses. So yeah, to me, it's a two-ended story there of, we have to be receptive to the employer's needs, but most of them understand that there is a national mission need as well.
Thanks very much. Appreciate it.
Are there any other questions? Say you learn something new every day. I've never heard of it. It's amazing.
That is a new one. It's less than a year old.
Nothing more to say.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, sir.
General, for your briefing. Thank you very much.
Sir.
Well, at this time, I'm going to have a few announcements. Then we're going to briefly open up, I think, a hearing, just discussion on 2039, find out some facts, and then I'll postpone it again. So we have 3 bills coming up next Tuesday on the 7th. We will hear them on the 7th and work them on the 9th. They are HB 2209. Representative Johnson is doing that one assigned. HB 2211. Representative Pushkin will do that one. And the real long one, 2210 with 5 lines. Representative Riz will do that one. But I think there's more information in that, but we won't tell anyone. These will be worked on that Thursday, introduced on Tuesday. We have 2 more coming up on the 14th on a Tuesday. We'll work them on the 16th, and we have the 21st for a last day. That is our last day for this committee. So we have 1 day to spare. Any questions on the bills? Okay. We'll hand those out on Tuesday. I'd like to open up a hearing on 2039. Representative Dodson, would you please explain a few of those amendments that have been reorganized?
As you know, the 2039 is the one we discussed on hunting and fishing and licensing. Reviser will have some balloons out to us, I think, later this morning or this afternoon. So if you could take a look at those, make sure we've accommodated all the comments that everyone's had, that would be good, because then we'll roll in when we start discussing it. We'll be all ready to go. Essentially, what has happened is this: when Representative Waymaster submitted the bill, he had put in there at a disability rate of 50%. We then added some comments from Colonel Kelly from MOA, and then we had the testimony coming in from Secretary Lovelace. So when we tried to reconcile all this, if you remember, the current rate of disability for accepting a hunting license reduction was at 30%. So what it meant was those folks who were between 30 and 50 would be disenfranchised, if you will. So the idea that was kind of summed up was, let's just keep it at 30. We would reference then the CFR, because the CFR would guide whatever the state would do for now and in the future. And then there was one balloon there at the bottom, and the balloon said, other than a dishonorable discharge. Now, the discharge that lies just above that is an other than honorable. And what we'd like to do is preserve the honorable discharge that would go with this hunting license. And then the hunting license would apply to everything, all hunting and fishing. And then obviously from what you read in the hunting and fishing regulation is that tags and other kinds of devices are required if you want to go deer hunting or turkey hunting and things like that, even duck stamps and so on. So those things wouldn't change. We just do the basic hunting license. And in order to overcome the issue that Secretary Lovelace raised, which was if you didn't require a hunting license at all, there would likely be an encounter or two in the field when someone couldn't produce a hunting license. So providing a hunting license at no cost seemed to be the good alternative to that. Now, there's also a provision in the current regulation that has a half price for 65 to 74 years old. And just having this go all the way to 75 would obviate that. And then the 75 provision that's in the bill would remain. So as soon as that, the reviser sends out those balloons, then again, if you just take a quick look at that, make sure that we didn't miss anything, make sure it's all reconciled. Because there's a lot of provisions in there, a lot of, I mean, this is essentially a regulation, if you would, with some provisos wrapped into it. So most of it is just what I described. That's the meat of the issue we'd like to accomplish.
Any questions? Representative Goddard?
Thank you. I think that was a good explanation of the changes that would be made to the bill. I just want to clarify one thing, is that when a person turns 74, 75 years old, the provision that they still can hunt and fish with free hunting and fishing licenses is in the bill.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Yes. Representative Ruiz?
That one section, that, I forget the age range now. I think it's like 65 to 74, something like that.
It's 65 to 74. Yeah,
Okay. And that applies to everybody. It doesn't matter if you're a veteran or not.
correct.
Okay. Does that remain intact?
That remains intact for everyone except the veterans.
Okay.
And as described, once you get to 75, then you can continue to hunt. Thank you.
Any other questions? Representative Hill?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, it seems like to me, if instead of issuing a free hunting license every year, that we should issue a permanent hunting and fishing license, and it would speed that up clerically.
That's probably a good idea, and we can, did you get that okay? We'll wind that in there. That's a good suggestion.
Any other questions? Representative Goddard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that issue, I think when a person turns 75, it'd be a pretty simple procedure for a game warden to check a driver's license or some other form of documentation that has a birth date on it. And I'm not opposed to a license being issued at 75, but the other option would be just to go by birth date. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? I was given information, help from advisors. Is there a need for a separate bill? Or is there not? For the license?
We do not need a separate bill at this time. This can be amended because you want to put the 75 license back into the bill. So this can just be an amendment.
I didn't want any other complications. So we will have a resumed hearing, cancel this on Thursday. Hopefully we'll work this out. And if everyone's okay, we might suspend the rules. Get it out of here if everyone agrees. If you have any questions, please get with the people involved, General Dodson with his amendments. Make sure that everything is very clear. Any other things be brought up for the committee? Motion for adjournment? Second? General Dodson, I got his hands first. We're adjourned. Thank you very much.